Hi, in this lesson we're going to introduce you to Cisco's Identity Services Engine, or Cisco ISE. At the end of this video you should be able to describe what ISE is, what it can do for you, and why it's an important part of your identity, access, and segmentation and threat strategy. So what is ISE? No, it's not something you cool your soda off with, or in my case bourbon because I'm from Kentucky, but it is pretty cool. In simple terms, you gain visibility into what's on your network, you can control who can access your network and what they can get access to. It can help mitigate threats by dynamically changing the authorization that is assigned to an endpoint. It can authenticate wired, wireless, and VPN users, and it can scale to lots of endpoints. And yes, lots is a technical term. Have you heard of Zero Trust? Zero Trust is a buzzword in the industry. In simple terms, when someone or something requests access to resources, you must first verify their trustworthiness before granting access. ISE is an integral part of the Zero Trust strategy. So keep that in mind when thinking about your workload, your workplace, and your workforce from a Zero Trust perspective. So network access control, or NAC for short, is a term that's been around for some time. NAC is a major component of ISE, but ISE by itself isn't just a NAC solution. ISE offers so much more. Think of it as NAC Next Generation. ISE provides us a centralized point to understand what's on our network, what's connecting, categorizes these devices, helps us create access control policies, and automatically provision the access control and security policy. In essence, it allows us to connect the users to the resources they need consistently across the environment. So one of the issues with dealing with threats is, how do I mitigate them quickly? ISE gives us the ability to dynamically control access and respond quickly to threats by integrating with many other security solutions on the market. One of the biggest issues that has contributed to a lot of the breaches as of late is the lack of proper segmentation. Segmentation can be a daunting task, but ISE can help you define your policy in a central location and provision that policy consistently across your environment. So when I talk to customers about ISE, I always like to remind them that while ISE is a focal point for identity and access in the network, there are some things that it does not provide, and we need to just keep these things in mind. While ISE can posture and look at endpoints and profile them and help us understand what they are, it doesn't replace endpoint protection. We still need anti-malware, antivirus. Those things are still required in a production environment. ISE doesn't monitor network traffic, so it's not a network monitoring solution. While it does help us and integrate with third-party systems that may monitor network traffic and look for anomalous behavior, it doesn't monitor that network traffic. ISE doesn't replace the need for vulnerability management. So we still need vulnerability management systems to be able to scan our endpoints and give us a degree of confidence that they are not vulnerable to known threats that are in the environment. And ISE, at the end of the day, does not replace your traditional network-based security, your next-gen firewall, your next-gen IPS. ISE integrates with all of these, but it doesn't replace these. And this is a key point to keep in mind when talking to your leadership, talking to your company about how you're going to implement ISE into the network, into the security and segmentation strategy. So you may have heard of the term DNA, or software-defined access. DNA is a system of technologies that allows you to automate building out and securing a campus network. ISE is a big part of this strategy, and it's the policy engine for SDA. For those of you guys with a network background, ISE is the control plane that maintains and distributes the policy to the network devices that participate in the campus fabric. So what are some of the things that ISE helps me with? These are a handful of the use cases, the primary use cases that ISE offers. It's not all of them, and we can mix and match any of these, but we're going to tackle these briefly here. So asset visibility. ISE helps us understand what's on our network, what kind of device they are. Is it an iPhone? Is it an iPad, Windows, Android, etc.? And helps us understand that so that we can start building our security policy around that. We've talked about this quite a bit. Access control. How do I control access to what gets on the network? ISE is a big portion of that strategy. Guest access and BYOD. Guest access has become kind of a mainstream in companies. If you don't have guest access, then your customers or your visitors are unhappy. So guest access and BYOD, ICE has built-in workflows that allow you to very easily and simply install these and manage these in the environment. Segmentation. As we talked about before, segmentation is something that is really lacking in the industry today, and ICE really helps us define that segmentation policy and automate that across the environment, making it very easy to manage and maintain in a large environment. Threat control. So sharing the contextual information that I have in ICE with other third-party systems, such as vulnerability management systems, threat systems, and vice versa. Being able to push that data out and read that data in and make use of that additional contextual data in our policies. And then device administration. So device administration is basically TACACS. How do I migrate from legacy TACACS to Cisco ISE and still provide the same services? ISE does that for us as well too. And then just to cap that off, we've already talked about integrations, and we're going to talk a lot more about that as we move forward throughout the presentation. So let's look at some of these in a little bit more detail. Asset visibility. Knowing what's on your network is a key to being able to control access, manage vulnerabilities, build a segmentation policy. One of the first use cases of ICE is helping to understand what's on our network. ICE does this by providing both passive and active capabilities and storing that information in a database of endpoints. From type of endpoint to vulnerabilities to installed applications, ICE gives you many ways to query and utilize this information while we share this information with other systems. And we'll talk a lot more about this moving forward. If we look at a couple examples, this is a screenshot of the context visibility application within ICE. As you can see, I've got an endpoint up on the screen, and I'm showing a list of installed applications that's on that endpoint. Over off to the side, we've got some other information. In this case, it's Active Directory information. So this machine is joined to AD, and I've got access to all these attributes that are part of AD as well too, that I can use in my policies. So pretty cool from that perspective. Access control. We've talked about this quite a bit already, but at the end of the day, how do I control access to what gets on my network, and how do I grant them permission? For a multitude of authentication options and directory integrations, we've got PKI, we've got SAML, we've got MAC bypass, and we've got 802.1x. ICE provides us the flexibility to provide whatever authentication mechanism is available for the majority of endpoints that are out there. Guest access is no longer a nice to have. It's become an expectation in the industry. For providers of consumer services, it's a key component to customer satisfaction, and the ability to easily attach and get online is something that almost every organization must deal with. Take that a step further, and allowing users to bring their own devices and connect those to either the corporate network or the guest network between the two is becoming standard for companies, and ICE offers us many workflows to be able to do this easily and efficiently across the enterprise. As you can see, there's a handful of built-in workflows, and we can use our own corporate themes, we can use portals that ICE has built in, we can brand those, we can do sponsored login, we can do hotspot login. There's a lot of different things we can do from that perspective. And it's very flexible to meet your needs. Segmentation, we've talked about this already. Do you guys still segment with VLANs, an access list on firewalls with IP addresses? How do you manage it? Is it manual? Do you make mistakes? Being able to segment with different methods, both legacy and new group-based methods, is something ICE can help us streamline. ICE gives us the ability to simplify managing our policies by giving us the ability to centrally manage them and allow ICE to automatically provision this policy on the network access devices. This helps us maintain compliance by keeping policy consistent across the domain. Delivering and provisioning resources to support newer business initiatives quickly is something most IT organizations strive for. But how do we do this and still maintain a strong security posture? With ICE, all this is automated. So once you define your policies, MAC or moves as and changes become much easier, allowing you to respond quicker to business initiatives. And we can do this by abstracting the network component from the identity and visualize this not in traditional IP source, destination, and port nomenclature, but a simplified matrix that allows us to understand what is applied without getting our I's crossed with a bunch of IPs and ports. And then lastly, threat control. Everybody has other systems, whether it be firewalls, IPSs, vulnerability management systems, endpoint protection solutions. Why not make use of these solutions to enrich the capabilities of your network access policy? It's enabled through open integration. ISE has something called PXGrid, which is basically an RFC standard based on the old XMPP protocol, so it's a publisher-subscriber model. So basically, ISE can publish contextual information out, and other systems can subscribe and pull that information in. It works with a number of different third-party systems, from security incident event management systems to vulnerability management systems, behavioral analytics, and so on. This is now an RFC standard, so it's no longer a Cisco proprietary, it's actually an RFC that is out there in an industry standard. You can read more about it in the link at the bottom of the slide. Now, let's take a quick look at the ISE user interface and review the most common options and areas that you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis from an administrative perspective.
We're going to give you a brief overview of the ISE user interface and go over some of the options that you're going to use in your daily operational tasks. When you first log into ISE, you're going to see a dashboard with specific applets in it. These applets are customizable and show key performance metrics about the system. Two of the most specific ones, or most important ones, are down here, are the alarms and the system summary. This gives you an overall indication of the health of the system. Again, these dashboards and dashlets are completely customizable. We can customize them by moving up here to the right, clicking on the gearbox, and selecting the option we want. For instance, if I wanted to add a custom dashboard called Pearson that only had the alarms and the system summary, I could do that. Now I've got a dashlet with only the alarms and the system summary front and center. Moving across from left to right, context visibility. This is where our endpoints and the various things that we know within the system are going to be presented. This is where we will go to look at endpoints and understand the attributes, how they've been categorized, and the policies that are associated with them. If I pull up an example endpoint, quick overview, I can see applications that are installed on this endpoint, attributes, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail, authentication summary, so the last authentication that occurred with this endpoint and what the result was. If I'm integrated with any threat systems, if there are any threats that were triggered from that external system and shared with ISE, as well as any vulnerabilities if I was integrated with the vulnerability management system. Moving over again, the Operations tab. This is where our radius troubleshooting will normally start. Live logs are the events that are sent real time to the ISE system that help me understand the status of the endpoints and their authentication. I'll go here to get details on successes and failures and to start my debugging process. All these fields are totally searchable, so if you want to search for a specific MAC address or a specific endpoint, you can do so. Notice I've got live logs and I've got TACACS live logs. Just a key note, radius and TACACS functionality is separated within ISE, so you can still keep network device administration separate from network access administration. Diagnostic tools you may use from time to time in troubleshooting more difficult issues. Things underneath the diagnostic tools that may be a benefit are our endpoint debug. This is where we put in a specific endpoint and start a debug process that's going to collect all the logs associated with that event that I can look at. The other one that may be used frequently is our TCP dump or our network capture. If we need to look at specific network traffic from an ISE node to a specific endpoint, we can set that up and start that here. The policy option is where we're going to define our policy components, and you'll spend a lot of time in here when developing your policies and building your system. The administrative tab is where we're going to set things from a global setting perspective. For instance, our deployments, our licensing, our certificates, our identity management options, all those are done here. And then finally, we have work centers. As you can tell, there's a lot of options to get to where you need to be to build your ISE environment. Work centers, what they've done is they've actually taken some of the most common workflows and they've bundled those together into a single place that we can go and understand the components that are required as well as link us straight to those options. For instance, if I want to set up guest access, I come in here and I pick the guest access workflow. And I've got a 1, 2, 3 option. It gives me step 1, what do I need to do to prepare? Step 2, what do I need to go define? And step 3, how do I actually turn this and go live? That is a brief overview of the ISE UI, and we'll go into each more of these options in more detail as we move forward. Thank you.